This week, we share our test results of the 2021 Toyota RAV4 Prime Plug-in Hybrid. We discuss rumors of an Apple car and ask our experts, could a bike rack cause your car's springs to age prematurely? Next on Talking Cars. Hello, we're back. I'm Keith Barry.
I'm Jake Fisher.
And I'm Mike Quincy.
And we're here to talk cars yet again. This week we were reading the news. We read the news just like you, and we read a report in Reuters and from a few other places about something brewing between Hyundai and Apple. And, we found that this report from Reuters that said that Hyundai Motor and Apple plan to sign a partnership deal for an electric vehicle, potentially an autonomous electric vehicle. And they plan to sign this deal in March and start production around 2024 in the United States, possibly at a Kia factory in Georgia. And, Hyundai and Kia have the same corporate parent. We reached out to Hyundai and Apple. Apple didn't respond. Hyundai said no comment, but they did tell us they really liked the podcast. And then also on kind of a related note, there was CES this week, and Sony said that it was driving its Vision S car, this concept car that Sony made on public roads, and their car debuted last week. So, Jake, what is this? So the car industries and the personal electronic industries, are they merging? What's going on here? What's your take?
We're seeing convergence really quickly here. This is interesting. I mean, we've been talking about this for a while. I mean, CES has been going on, and CES is the Consumer Electronics Show, and all the car companies, they want to be there. But what's interesting is that, when you look at cars, I mean, we've talked about some of these cars, you look like a Tesla, it's like a computer on wheels. What's really differentiating some of these cars are the electronics more so than powertrain and some of the things that, as gearheads get excited about, because it's just perhaps some of that powertrain stuff is becoming commodity, and it's the electronics that's the interesting real differentiator. And that's why I think it really opens up this door for a company like Apple, or whether it's Google or Sony, to say, hey, we're going to go get in the market and we're going to go start building cars. And they can. And there's a couple of things it's not just about the electronics. It's also about what's happened to the auto industry, that it's really, I'm into bikes, right? You go and get a bike, and if you buy a specialized bike or a Trek bike, it's the same components, right? It's Shimano, it's SRAM. They put these things on and they build a bike. And what we're seeing is the auto industry is more and more like that. You could go source a transmission. You could go source seats from a third party, they call it the tier 2s or tier 1 supplier, and actually put them all together and get a car. The issue here with Apple is that they do not have any production facilities that are going to be able to help them build a car. So they obviously have to have a partner. And, that may be what we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Car companies don't necessarily make their own parts. I mean, how many cars out there have a ZF 8-speed transmission, and cars that are they're direct competitors? Audi and BMW, the Jeep Grand Cherokee and the Land Rover Defender, the Rolls-Royce Phantom and the Dodge Charger. They're or you'll go to these booths at auto shows where you have the same steering wheel, and it's just, from one of these suppliers, and they just put a different badge or a different font or something on it. Or companies like Visteon, all these new displays in cars are all made by one of these large manufacturers. We see that happen when a recall happens. A company like Takata that made airbags for everybody, and then all of a sudden something goes wrong. But Mike, is this about getting things, in-house or hiring it out? I mean, does Apple need Hyundai more here, or does Hyundai need Apple more?
Well, looking at the whole Apple Hyundai combination, a partnership or whatnot, and it reminded me of a conversation that we had at our track many years ago. We were talking about built-in navigation systems. I mean, going along the tech route here, I mean, it prompted a bigger discussion on how the future of smartphones, could be integrated in your car. I mean, you're talking about, outside source for your music and different navigation. And Jake very, very wisely actually said, car companies aren't tech companies. Getting built in, or as the industry says, the native nav systems in a new car means that the tech in the car is already likely several years old. Whereas your smartphone is constantly being updated. And it was kind of like, it made me think about it, because I always liked the built-in nav systems. They always seemed to work. They were pretty easy to program. But Jake's thought about that, really made me think about it, and getting cars now with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, it's making more and more sense. So it doesn't surprise me, that Hyundai is going to hook up with Apple or vice versa, so they can utilize the strengths of both companies. I mean, it makes more sense than ever. But just because you bring in outside expertise, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go well. I mean, the case in point is Microsoft's work with My 4 Touch. I mean, it was a reliability disaster in CR surveys. So just because you have a lot of financial or technical heft behind you, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go smoothly.
And who did Ford bring in to save the day was QNX, which used to be BlackBerry. And the systems now are actually quite good, but it's powered by a company that has kind of become a tier 2 supplier that isn't one of those name brands. So, yeah.
What's the key here is, let's have people do what they're good at, and I think that's kind of the aha moment. Now, Apple, they could go and they could get an old abandoned factory and start building cars if they wanted to, but they don't have that expertise. And I think you see some stumbling. So we obviously talk about Tesla a lot, and they didn't outsource the car to someone else. But they do have some stumbling, when we see issues with paint, and issues with body fitment. Obviously a tech company at its core doesn't have that experience that, a company like Mitsubishi would be pretty good at, for instance. They have other problems. But I think that is really kind of the future. Let's get everyone to do what they're really good at. I did a junior year abroad in London. I sat into school classes at the London School of Economics, and they were talking about globalization. And they were talking about cars. So suddenly I perked up, and they're like, if you want to build a really good car, you get the Germans to do the handling. You get the Japanese to do the engine to make sure it's reliable. You get the British to do the wood paneling. That is really how you get a really good product, is get everyone to do what they're really good at, and don't try to do something you don't have the expertise in.
Yeah, I mean, Apple doesn't have a factory in Cupertino that makes where Apple employees are making iPhones. They're not going to set up a factory to make a car. As far as what the car is actually going to be, is this that cover of Motor Trend a few years ago where it looks like an iPod on wheels and it's going to be a self-driving car? That's what I'm seeing in the kind of more popular press, is Apple's making a self-driving car that'll be on the road by 2024.
I think what you're seeing is a lot of speculation. Apple's pretty good at keeping secrets, and they are working really, really hard to keep this one secret. So I think we're not sure. It'll be exciting, though. It'll be interesting. I'll speculate that.
And it's certainly going to be a challenge. I mean, General Motors started a new car company with Saturn, which, Jake is very familiar with. And even they gave up on that. So, I think, if Apple's going to become like the Apple car company, it's not going to be easy.
We will see. We will see, and probably at an Apple event, who knows what might happen. So before we move on, we just want to take a second to say that Talking Cars is part of Consumer Reports. We're a nonprofit organization, and the work that we do is funded by members, by memberships, by people who subscribe to Consumer Reports, as well as donations. So if you are able to give, it really helps us keep doing that work that we do. It helps us keep doing this show. So if you want to find out more, you can go to cr.org/give-talking-cars. cr.org/give-talking-cars. And one of those things that we do is we buy our own vehicles to test. And that's unlike almost anyone else out there. And one of the vehicles that we bought was the 2021 Toyota RAV4 Prime. And we finished testing it. And those test results and all the information is up at cr.org. We can talk a little about it here, right? Why not? Among friends. So we bought a 2021 XSE, which is a very well-equipped version. It's 302 horsepower, 2.5 liter four-cylinder plug-in hybrid engine. So there's a hybrid RAV4, and then there's a plug-in hybrid RAV4, which is called the Prime. It has a continuously variable transmission and all-wheel drive. Can travel about 40 miles on electric power alone on a full charge. And to get that full charge on a 240-volt outlet, it takes about 5 hours. Some of the options that came with it came with heated steering wheel, rain-sensing wipers, heated rear seats, some nice things. It came out to about $45,900, which is expensive for a RAV4, but because it plugs in, it's eligible for that federal $7,500 tax incentive that EVs currently get. So, Mike Quincy, you've driven this car. Can you talk a little about what we found in our test results?
So as with any test car, we've always got some good news and some bad news. For the Toyota RAV4 Prime, one of the good news is acceleration. I mean, Keith, you mentioned the 302 combined horsepower. It makes the RAV4 Prime plenty quick. This is kind of a sedate-looking, smallish SUV, but it really scoots. We were impressed with the fuel economy. You've also mentioned the 40 miles that we're getting on electric power only. But being a RAV4 hybrid, you can always count on good fuel economy. However, the extra weight, I believe, of the batteries of the Prime doesn't quite bring it up to the regular RAV4 hybrid's fuel economy number, but it's still really impressive. But I think what was the most surprising thing of the RAV4 Prime is the ride. The added weight from the batteries, and I think Toyota did some suspension adjustments. The Prime actually rides better than the regular RAV4, so that was a real bonus, unexpected bonus. Now the bad news is we found pretty long stopping distances in both the dry and wet surfaces. The pedal felt a little touchy at low speeds, which sometimes you'll find with electrics or hybrid models. So kind of a downside of this one was the stopping distances. We also found it has a backup warning signal when you put the car in reverse. It's a high-pitched wail, kind of annoying. You have to get used to it, because it's so silent under electric or EV, the hybrid system taking over under low load. You're using the gas engine, so it doesn't make that much noise. They're putting that in as a safety feature, but you really kind of have to, be ready for that the first time you drive one of these.
Other EVs have those, but they sound a little more pleasant. Some of them they sound like a symphony orchestra playing, and this one it kind of sounds bad. A wail is
wail, not a symphony.
Yeah.
But listen, I like this car. I like that the forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking is standard, and that's my phone. Yes, I still have a phone. It has a standard all-wheel drive. Just a fantastic, typical Toyota reputation for top-notch reliability. Toyota really knows how to do hybrids really well. And you mentioned the tax rebate of $7,500. I think that this car is way more appealing to me than a regular EV, but I'm definitely on the edge of my seat waiting to hear what you guys think.
Jake, you've driven this. This is a car you kind of got stuck in, right, for a long time?
I wouldn't call it stuck.
No, it's not a bad thing. It's in these times, etc.
In these times, right. Normally we go into the office every day and we switch cars every day. Since I'm not going to the office every day, I wind up with one car for a little bit, a while. And I just got out of the RAV4 Prime. So I actually put about 800 miles onto it. So that's what's kind of a lot. And, you mentioned, charging on 220. What's interesting about these plug-in vehicles, these plug-in hybrids, is that you don't necessarily have to have a 220. So I've been actually charging it on my 110. It takes about around 12 hours to do it, but it kind of works out. The car sits in my garage from, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and it's all charged up. And what I've realized is that somehow in my life, everything that I go to is 15 miles away. I don't know why, but for some, I think Toyota realized this. So, even in the cold, I'm getting around 30 miles on the charge without having to put bring the engine on. So that means that I never filled the tank. In fact, I never even got it to, half tank with the entire time that I had the car. Because generally what I do is I go out and I'm driving on electric. It seems like the engine kind of turns on when I hit my block, just reminding me that there is an engine. And then I plug it into the 110 and, it's very functional. Living with this vehicle, it makes you think that, for the majority of the time that you're driving, if you're only going 30, 35 miles round trip, you may not need to get a full EV to really just stop using gasoline for the most part. So it's a really interesting thing. And then, Mike, you talk about, the power and the horsepower. To me, it was less about, look, I'm not drag racing the RAV4, okay? I'll admit to that. But what the difference is that for anyone who has driven a Toyota hybrid in the past, it's not necessarily a pleasant thing when you put your foot down on the pedal, right? You hear the thing go, wee, it's making all types of noise and it's not connected. Here is a Toyota hybrid that just, it stays quiet, even when you're in the hybrid version and you've gotten rid of your charge, the initial charge, it feels powerful. You hit the gas and it's kind of effortlessly goes, which is really, really nice.
The interesting thing to me is how the sort of gradations of electrification from just a battery electric hybrid that doesn't plug in versus all the way to a full EV and how different they are for different types of lifestyles. So, Jake, I'm almost the opposite of you. Everything that I need to go to is within walking distance, so I don't really drive locally that much. And when I do need to drive, it tends to be a lot longer of a distance. And I don't have a garage where I can plug in. So from that, this is not a great car for me because I'm driving it mostly as a gas electric hybrid and lugging around all that extra weight of the plug-in hybrid, the heavier battery, etc. So I'm actually getting worse fuel economy than I would in just a standard hybrid. So if you're thinking about buying a plug-in hybrid, just keep that in mind. I also think that of the plug-in hybrids, this is one of the best out there. I mean, compared to like the Subaru Crosstrek, which puts the battery in the back and it takes up half the trunk space. This is a car that you wouldn't notice that it can plug in unless you plug it in. And it's like a hybrid unless you plug it in. But if you're not going to be driving just within that 30 miles, it might not be for you. And also, the other thing is that Toyota's not making that many of these, right?
It took us a while to find our test car, if I remember correctly.
Well, I think there was an initial demand, but I think it really depends on what the market bears. Right now we're kind of like this big question mark, like where is the market gonna go? Are we gonna be truly EV? Are plug-in hybrids gonna make a difference? I'll say one other thing about, in terms of, market going forward. The one thing that really kind of irked me about this car was I just wish it was easier to plug it in. So, and it's not that it's really hard or anything like that, but look, my wife has a Prius. She goes and fills the tank like every, at this point, like every 3 months. But that's a whole nother story. But every time you park this car, you're plugging in, which means, you open up the door, you have to take off the little thing, you have to take the thing off of the, there's a whole process.
Yeah, there's like a little plastic plug cover like
there's a little
put on
plastic
to keep toddlers from sticking their fingers in. Yeah.
Which means that you can't do it with one hand. You can on a Tesla. A Tesla, you could go one hand, it automatically opens and plugs. So what I would love to see is just inductive charging. I'm parking in the same place in my garage. It would be, and I know there's aftermarket solutions for these types of things, but it's like, it would be wonderful. I could just park it and then it's just, automatically charging through.
Like a GM EV1.
The technology exists. Yes.
Yeah. You talk about going forward. Toyota has been not mysteriously, but they're not, talking about building just straight EVs like almost every other car company is doing. They're going hydrogen fuel cell. They're really doubling down, obviously, on hybrids, and now they've got a plug-in model. But maybe for some people, this is the bridge. If they're not sure, they want to jump straight into an EV, but they like the idea. Maybe something like a RAV4 Prime is a way for them to get their feet wet.
And Toyota's getting their feet wet too. Hydrogen vehicles, they allow them to basically develop the same electric drivetrain and just swap out that fuel cell for a battery. And they've said that they're coming out with some EVs in the future. But again, they're a little further behind than you might expect. But as far as the RAV4 Prime is concerned, we know it's a popular car that a lot of folks are interested in. You can find out the full test results and any more information you want about it at cr.org. So on to audience questions. We got some great ones this week. No video questions, but if you do have a question, send it to talkingcars@icloud.com. We love your written questions. We love your video questions. Send them along. We're working our way through them. So our first one is from RLH. Which would be a great initials for a personalized license plate. So RLH asks, ideally this question would be asked on an episode with Jake Fisher, as he famously owns a Toyota MR2 as well as a Prius. Toyota recently released a modestly priced, high-performance, all-wheel drive Yaris GR, and it's earning rave reviews, but it's not available in the United States. I was wondering how an enthusiast driver and Toyota customer like Jake felt about the United States being excluded from all the fun. Well, RLH ask you shall receive. Jake, how do you feel?
How do I feel? I desperately want to drive the car.
What is that for those who haven't been reading Autocar and what is this?
Yeah. So I mean, basically, this is a little rally car. This is a high horsepower, all-wheel drive, very high performance car that and it's actually not that cheap. I mean, actually, it's probably going to be it's around $35,000-$40,000 to start. But talk about high performance, small, fun to drive type of vehicle. And these are the types of vehicles that I absolutely love. That said, I kind of have this thing that I refuse to ask automakers to build cars that aren't going to sell. And that, unfortunately, is the situation that they could offer it here, but I mean, the whole thing. Auto journalists and car geeks. I mean, we all want that stick shift station wagon with rear wheel drive that no one would buy, but it does get a lot of us very, very excited. So I mean, the truth is we do have vehicles here. I mean, there are WRXs, and we went over those rally cars, the STI. Ford even got into the game with a Fiesta, which again,
we saw how well that sold. Yep.
Right. So like they did the thing that the auto enthusiasts want, and unfortunately, I think my real asks for the auto industry are maybe more modest. Like how about give us a stick shift for the Supra, the Toyota Supra. How about that? I would settle for that beyond, a $40,000 subcompact. So
the world's most expensive Yaris.
Right.
Yeah, Mike, is there any forbidden fruit that you're after?
Well, when Jake said, he's rubbing elbows with the people of the London School of Economics, I'm sure back then you saw a lot of cars there that we couldn't get in the United States. And you're probably, oh, I like that. Because as you and I both really kind of like some of the smaller, more fun cars to drive, that was the case for me. I remember growing up and reading, Car and Driver and Road and Track in the 70s and 80s, reading all about the cars we couldn't get. I mean, you heard the German market VW GTI was better than the one we could get. I mean, Nissan Skylines we couldn't have, and then it became all about gray market cars and whatnot. So sometimes some of us, the people that we work with, the people that we know in the car industry, we have what we call I'm calling this cross-continental automotive envy. I just made that up.
Yeah.
But
wow.
So I
need to talk to my doctor about that because I've got it.
There's antibiotics for that. But it's so funny because also Jake brought up station wagons, and I love the Audi RS Avant, which I'm sure Anatoly the Great is showing right now on your screen. I know Americans don't buy wagons, but 450 horsepower, twin turbo, 2.9 liter V6. I think this car is super, super cool, and I know we're probably never going to get it because, as we said, no one buys wagons. But what about you guys? Is there anything that you want you can't get?
I would take 48 hours in an Alpine A110. And for those who don't know, it's about $75,000. So that's why I would only have it for about 48 hours. But it's a two-seater, mid-engine, very light vehicle from a manufacturer called Alpine, which is part of Renault. It's very light. It's about 2,400 pounds. Tossable light car that gets rave reviews online. Although I don't know, it might be a sort of never meet your heroes moment that if you get to actually drive something, you might end up not loving it as much.
Jake, did you ever thought we would be working with someone who loved French cars so much?
Well, you never know. I mean, but Quince, you're exactly right. It's this cross-continental envy. In the late '90s, I worked in Luxembourg when I worked for GM, and I imported into Luxembourg a late '90s Cadillac Eldorado. And that car in Luxembourg, and I drove it through France. That was way more popular than any Ferrari because it really stuck out. The car with the big front end and all that.
Well, because they couldn't get that over there.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's awesome.
You go on. The fun thing about Twitter is that, you in social media is that you have friends in other countries now, and they're posting pictures of things. Oh my gosh, I saw a Chevy Lumina today. And it's like, oh God. Or the PT Cruiser was huge in Europe, and people still absolutely love them there. So it's, it's what wanting what you can't have, and be careful what you wish for. So Vic from New Mexico asks about adaptive cruise control. And I was wondering if adaptive cruise control makes a car less efficient than the ones not equipped with it. I also wonder if there's any discrepancy in efficiency between a camera-based or a radar-based system. Great question, Vic, because I know in the past, static cruise control, it was sort of this idea that if you want to save fuel on a long trip, you set it to, 55 at the time or 65 and set it and forget it. But unlike the static systems, there is no one adaptive cruise control, right, Jake? Like this is car by car, sometimes model by model.
Yeah, I mean, we did a whole test of active driving assistance systems, which is, the active steering as well as the adaptive cruise control systems. And they're different. So, I mean, the answer is actually it depends. It depends on one, how you drive, how aggressively you drive and how smoothly you drive, and how aggressively or smoothly that system drives. So some of them are actually very energetic and they want to accelerate quickly. Some are more slow and methodical. And some actually have adjustments where you could adjust kind of the personality of how quickly the car accelerates. So it really all depends. It's all about driving styles, not just yours, but the cars too.
Yeah. Dennis from Lafayette, Colorado asks, I have a 2007 Honda Element with 110,000 miles on it, and the tires have started having uneven wear patterns because the back springs began to fail and the car became difficult to align. When I first got the car, I added a hitch-mounted bike rack, and he provided a picture of it. I never take it off the car, and I'll attach my mountain bike a few times a week to ride in a trail. Did having that rack in the back of my car for close to 13 years hasten the demise of the rear springs? Mike Quincy, you have opinions on bike racks, right?
Right. Well,
you love them.
Well, when super producer Dave Abrams talked about this question of bike racks, he's like, Quincy, that's perfect for you. I said, actually, I really hate bike racks because you're always putting stuff on your roof and you have to be ready to the horror stories that I've heard about people putting bikes on their roofs and then driving right into their garage. A bike friend of mine has a little trick. He puts his garbage cans in front of his garage bay to remind him not to drive in because he's already ruined one bike. But you were asking about springs, so Jake, really, what's your answer for what's going on with this guy's Element?
It's a good question. I mean, I think you don't feel guilty. It's not your fault. It's okay. I mean, look, obviously any weight back there is going to contribute, but the truth is over 13 years, your springs are going to sag with or without that extra weight. In fact, the extra weight really isn't that much. Your bike rack, maybe it weighs 50 pounds or something. It is hanging off there, but you would have seen the same issue without it. So don't feel guilty. But Quince, to your point, I remember when we had our test Element and I was always mountain biking, and that is one of the best vehicles to throw your bike inside the vehicle because you could kind of hose off the interior. It's got a nice tall roof. So for me, I would just, fold those seats out of the way and just put the bike right inside it. Plus it's more secure.
With that in mind, if you want to learn more about bike racks, head over to consumerreports.org. We have a lot of cyclists on staff who jockey for position in these vehicles and are always putting bikes in cars and writing about it. And if you have any other questions, send them to talkingcars@icloud.com. Thanks so much for joining us on Talking Cars, and we'll talk cars again soon.